Hello and welcome to this week's episode of our Winol podcast. I'm here with my co-hosts Charlotte, Meadbh and Rebecca, and we're all going to be discussing the stories we've done this week. I wanted to start with Meadbh since Women's Day is in a couple of days.
Yeah.
I know your story is about endometriosis and it's quite a difficult topic to talk about, especially since so many people are suffering from it. Can you tell us more about how this story came to be and what made you want to make a story on this?
Well, I mean, at first it came from sort of a personal area. You know, I have one of my best friends suffers with it. I have PCOS myself, and I was aware that it is Endometriosis Awareness Month. So I just wanted to raise awareness, and because a lot of people go undiagnosed for so long, I wanted to make sure that, you know, even if just one person could see the story and get diagnosed, that would be great.
And what's the process to get diagnosed with it?
It's quite lengthy. I mean, it takes an average of about 8 to 9 years in the UK. But first of all, when you go to a GP, they'll ask about your symptoms, and they might ask you for a physical examination. So that can usually be an internal vaginal exam, and they'll check your abdomen and your pelvic area. They'll do some blood tests to make sure that your hormones are all in check. And there's advice on the NHS website to give as much information as you possibly can. You know, symptoms can range from pain during sex or pain when you go to the toilet, very heavy periods, so changing pads or tampons every hour or so. And if they think that you might have endometriosis, they'll refer to a specialist, so a gynecologist. They'll offer further tests, medicines and some pain treatment. And these further tests can include ultrasound scans, so that can be internal or over your tummy, and it can confirm if you have endometriosis. And in some cases it's possible to remove the tissue, but with all of the endometriosis surgeries, these are never fully fixed. If you are diagnosed with endometriosis, you will always have it, and it can come back time and time again.
And would you say that since the process to get diagnosed is so lengthy that maybe some people, if their symptoms are not as bad, at least at the beginning, or I'm not really quite sure how it works, but that they will just don't think it's worth it going through all that to get diagnosed?
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said about most illnesses. You know, when it comes to long waiting times, it can seriously deplete someone's motivation to get diagnosed. And even if people are willing and they really want it and they are trying to get every single possible appointment, they can go forever without getting diagnosed and proper treatment. And Endometriosis UK, back in 2024, they published a report with 2023 findings. There was a series of different numbers, but what they came up with was 3/4 of their respondents, so almost out of 5,000 people, the 3/4 had attended 5 or more GP appointments with symptoms before they got diagnosed. Almost half of the respondents had 10 GP visits. Over half of them had visited A&E at least once with the symptoms, and a quarter had visited 3 or more times. 20% of the respondents reported seeing a gynecologist 10 plus times before diagnosis, and 78% of respondents before diagnosis had one or more doctor tell them they were making a fuss about nothing or similar comments, and many had severity questioned by healthcare practitioners, and that is up 9% from 2020. But yeah, they often face a lot of difficulty, whether it be individual, so those doctors telling them it's nothing, getting misdiagnosed, or they're told that it's not that bad, where it can be that bad. It can up your chances of getting ovarian cancer by four times, and it can get so bad that sometimes people have found endometrial tissue in for example, the chest or even behind the eyes.
Oh my god. I guess it's so like don't know how to say it, but like being like treated that way, like, oh, that's nothing, blah, blah. It must be like so bad for people.
How can people kind of spread more awareness about this issue?
So again, Endometriosis UK has released different activities for us to do. It can be as simple as tea for endometriosis. So just have a cup of tea with friends and talk. There's the 1 in 10 challenge to represent the 1 in 10 people who have it. I should say 1 in 10 people who are assigned female at birth. And so that can be simple as, if you're knitting, every 1 in 10 stitch be a different colour, or every 1 in 10 row. Every 1 in 10 meals you do something different. You can write to your MPs. They want to have average wait times by 2030 be a year or less. So it's quite a big challenge ahead, but they are encouraging people to get involved. One big thing is wearing yellow for endometriosis awareness. So people will see in the reel I created, I'm wearing a yellow top. People walk to raise money, and that's throughout the year. And in general, ending stigma around talking about women's health and periods.
And so you said that it can be misdiagnosed really easily. So what, like, if they say it's not endometriosis, what other diagnoses would they give people to like justify those symptoms?
A lot of times it's just painful periods. That's what we have. It's part of being alive. But the 4 main ones that is kind of like, it's similar symptoms. So adenomyosis, which is the uterus growing into the muscle of the womb. They can actually be comorbid. You can have both. But they're very similar, yeah. We've got fibroids, which is non-cancerous growths, pelvic inflammatory disease or irritable bowel syndrome. And something else that is also similar and can be comorbid is PCOS. And that's polycystic ovarian syndrome. So that is cysts growing on your ovaries, and that can also be quite painful.
That was definitely interesting, and I'm glad we were able to discuss this, because I actually had no idea about most of the things you've just told me, and maybe I'm gonna think about going to my GP more often to check.
I was just thinking, actually, the fact that none of us really knew masses about it kind of makes me wonder whether the education system isn't doing
definitely
enough, because I definitely didn't get taught anything about it.
I think there definitely needs to be more awareness, more education. You'll see people in comment sections on Instagram, for example, all the time saying how long it took to get diagnosed or how little they knew before they were given resources by their nurses. And I think in general, when it comes to women's health, there should be more education. But obviously it's expensive, it takes up time, so it's hard to get there.
Yeah,
because it really should be something that every woman that has a possibility to be diagnosed with this or suffer from this, that they should at least know a bit about it. Just to know the symptoms and stuff like that, to know if they have a possibility of having it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, since we were talking about March, there's another thing that's going on in March, on the 20th of March, the Library Award. Charlotte, you've done your story on it. I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about the libraries that were obviously nominated, and about Winchester Library, of course.
The British Book and Library Award in 2025 has nominated Winchester amongst 3 other libraries, including Broadstairs Library, Portsmouth Library and West Sussex County Library. So it's up against 3 other libraries in the region. And it'll be interesting to see who wins out of them. I personally, as someone who's gone to the Winchester Library and hasn't gone to any of the others, I do think we have a good chance of winning it.
What makes a good library, do you think?
Definitely a range of spaces, I would say. I think a good thing about the Winchester one is the quiet zones, and the range of computers and seating, and the amount of activities the library itself holds. They have children's sessions where they have a library owner read out loud, and they have free period products, which I thought was really amazing, which anyone can pick up whenever they would like to. So kind of having a sense of community in one space is really important, and I think that's what a library should hold in itself, is the sense of community and activity, but also the chance to gain free resources like books, magazines, and going on computers and printing. So it's definitely a library that I would say is very, very good.
Sounds like a good place to educate yourself about endometriosis.
Oh yeah. I was just wondering, what's the actual award? Like, what does the library get? Does it get some sort of funding to build more, or?
I guess, yeah, probably, or a status of the best award of library in 2025. I think it's just kind of more of a statement.
Yeah, I guess just having the recognition of being like one of the best.
Yeah, we are the best. Come visit.
Into it and stuff like that.
Yeah. Probably from a PR point of view is definitely a good thing for them to win.
Good accolade to have.
Have you guys gone to the library?
Not recently.
I haven't been to the Winchester one. I've been to the uni one, but I haven't actually been to the Winchester one.
Yeah, neither have I.
I've gone past it, and at first I had no idea it was a library.
It is, yeah, because it's called the Arc, which is like part cafe.
Oh, actually, I have been to it. So sorry.
Yeah, I thought you had.
Sorry.
So it's like part cafe, part museum, and part library. So it's got a mixture of everything, really, which is quite nice.
Yeah, usually if I go to the library, it's the one in Basingstoke, because that's where I am at weekends. But I mean, I used to go to the Arc as a young child. My parents would go off shopping or like to O'Neill's or something to watch rugby, and I'd spend an afternoon in there. I loved reading as a kid.
Yeah.
And you were talking about like different spaces. I think that's so important to have dedicated spaces for children, for young adults, for teenagers, for elderly people to go and learn or have community. And I think it's such an important time, especially now when you have, for example, in America, there's like banned books, specific works of literature that cannot be read in schools or in districts. And I think it's so important to have that access to education and to all points of view, all walks of life.
Yeah, definitely. And the fact that anyone can take out any books and stuff is brilliant. I think libraries are quite underrated and underused.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
The amount of resources and stuff, it's quite overwhelming, really, because like you can take out like magazines as well, which my library back home definitely didn't do. So it's very good for students in that sense.
Yeah.
For studying, and you can do audiobooks and stuff. So
very accessible then.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I feel like it also promotes the library to like the younger generation. Obviously, we're kind of all addicted to our phones, so I think having a really nice library where we can go study, hang out with our friends, I feel like that's a really good thing for us.
Yeah.
Can you still rent out DVDs?
I don't know, actually. I don't think so. I've never seen it at the Winchester Library. I did back home from where I am, but I think they probably don't do it as much anymore because
I think I wouldn't even have anything to actually play a DVD.
Yeah,
right
that's
now.
the thing, exactly.
Maybe back home, but right here in uni, I don't think so because my computer
use a
or anything.
PS4, I guess.
So.
Yeah, we buy DVDs sometimes at my place.
I miss my DVDs. I used to have a massive collection of just Barbie DVDs.
Oh, I used to have DVDs of everything.
Me too. Barbie movies, they are the absolute best.
And in Chinham Library, that's where I first rented out Mulan, which is my favourite Disney movie.
Oh my god, mine too!
Cool.
But yeah, thank you so much, Charlotte. That was actually a really interesting story, and I'm hoping Winchester will win.
Yeah.
I've also done a story this week. It was actually about a recent protest that took place in Southampton. It was actually a protest dedicated to the right-wing movement. And obviously some people met up and they started chanting whatever they believe in. And then there was a counter-protest organized by Stand Up to Racism Southampton to counterattack their chants. It was actually really interesting to see 2 points of view and how these people talk about whatever they believe in.
Must have been like a really big clash of it's like completely
I
opposite
think
things.
Yeah, it definitely was. The police was involved. I think they detained some people. So it was definitely, I wouldn't say a dangerous place to be in, but definitely people were cautious around these people. Yeah, it was actually really interesting because this comes after the popularization of the right-wing movement all across the UK and all across Europe, actually.
And have these like rallies or protests or whatever you want to call them been going on in other cities in the UK apart from Southampton? Or
Absolutely, all across the UK. I think there was a really big movement happening after the Southport stabbings, where these kind of movements were happening all across the UK, especially anti-immigration and this idea of reforming the UK. So we have seen it in the summer and it's happening again. I think with the popularization and again with Donald Trump winning, Elon Musk tweeting about his support with Reform UK. So people are urged by these kind of figures to kind of go out and chant. And then you have the other side. So people are going to go out and they're going to protest. They have been doing it for quite a lot of time in the UK and all across Europe.
So with like Europe, is that, so Germany, they've got the AfD, which I'm pretty sure in quite a few places in Germany, judges have ruled them as actually fascist.
Oh yeah, they have.
And we've got France, Italy as well.
Yeah, in Italy, yeah.
Italy is a growing right movement. They have a freedom of speech.
Absolutely, yeah.
And freedom of expression. And they're only being met with counter-protests. Are they being met with anything with the police, with the government? Are they being kind of stifled with that?
I think only if they are violent or if they carry guns with them or anything that might hurt the others. But other than that, they're just out chanting and marching. So not really. Again, free speech. They're allowed to go out and chant, you know.
Yeah.
So
what would you say attracts people to Reform UK?
Well, mostly people who are anti-immigration and are anti-government in general. Reform UK is a little bit different from other parties because it has its own identity. So experts are saying that people no longer trust governments, especially after so many incidents have happened. And so they want something new. And they believe that a party such as Reform UK and all of these other independent parties have something to offer in that matter, especially since they made their stance on mass migration, refugees, and everything really clear. It's also a lot of young men. Statistics show that a lot of young men are attracted to these kind of movements. It's mostly because they tend to spend a lot of time on the internet, and you've got figures like Elon Musk, J.D. Vance, Donald Trump, who are very on the internet and are always tweeting. And so obviously they're more easily influenced. On the other side, a lot of people, again, have been influenced by social media platforms to counter-protest and to stand up against racism. It created this whole, I think it divided a lot of people in that matter. Yeah.
How did you find this story?
It was actually quite difficult to do.
Yeah.
But other than that, there was a lot of footage online that I could use. It was actually really interesting to cover because I had no idea about it. I had no idea that was happening. I found it on a Facebook group, actually. It was kind of funny. I came across it and I was a little bit confused because I didn't know. Again, I live in Southampton and I had no idea what was happening. But yeah, it was quite a big thing, and if anyone is curious about the story, you can definitely watch my reel on our Instagram account.
I was going to ask, what drew you to the story in general? Like, why did you feel like it was important to cover?
Well, first of all, it was local, and as someone who, as I said, lives in Southampton, I had no idea it was happening. So I feel like covering it would reach way more people, to be more careful about, when these protests are happening, to not be in the middle of the crowd. And also to kind of understand what the right-wing movement means, what it is, what the counter-protesters were, why they were there, and what they were standing for. Again, just for people to kind of understand, because I feel like not everybody is aware of these movements and what is happening in terms of politics. Well, we are running out of time, unfortunately. So this was our episode for today's podcast, actually. I really hope everybody has enjoyed it, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.